Welcome to another episode of Threads of Enlightenment. Today we are lucky to have Lynn. Lynn explain who she is and what she has done, Lynn Russell. I am very excited about a particular topic that she's is her field of expertise. So I am going to let her introduce herself, and then we'll get, as we do here in Threads, get behind the story and find out how she got there, the tools that she used to get there, and then we will get a chance to grow together. Lynn, thank you so much for coming by.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Happy to be here.
Yes. So introduce yourself and tell people your something about you, and then, go ahead.
Yeah. Okay, well, I have been a spiritual seeker all my life. From the childhood, about 8 or 9, I started thinking about it. And so I've studied just about every religion in the world, and also the more open spiritual philosophies. So, and I had the wonderful opportunity to study near-death experiences, and that was so enlightening. It put all of the information that I had been learning all my life. It all put it all together and made more sense. Made it make more sense. So that's a basic idea of where I come from. And I guess the only other thing I want to add to that is that during the study, in the beginning, I was interested in what happened at death, but after a while, that wasn't as much interest to me. I was looking at the deeper stuff, the deeper spiritual messages that were coming back, and that's what my interest was.
Oh, wow. So, Lynn, you had mentioned that at a young age that you were interested in this topic. Now, as you grew up in high school, college, when was that pivotal time that you began to really took the steps to that? And what steps did you take? How does someone get to where you are?
Okay. Well, I think it was a very rough trip on the way because I kept thinking, I've got it. And then I would lose it again. It was like I went 2 steps forward and 3 steps back. I would get very discouraged because I was seeking this answer. I think what I was seeking was truth. I wanted to know what the truth was. Well, who knows? Anyway, so it was a very hard trip until about the mid-1980s. And that was I had 3 kids, and they were all gone for the summer. And so I had peace and quiet. And I had a chance to, and I had been trying to do the Course of Miracles, but I would do such a horrible job. It was really bad. And I would start to do them, but being with kids, you have to be strict sometimes and get after them about things. And so I would read this thing about how wonderful I am and then have to scream at the kids and think, oh no, it didn't fit. So that was a bit of a problem. And then I was reading the Course of Miracles and I picked up Joel Goldsmith. Not too many people know Joel Goldsmith, but he is a Jewish man who lived in the United States. His books are old, but the material is just so magnificent. Anyway, he made the pieces all fit together. I went, there it is. And then I saw that we were all one. I saw the oneness. And that was like a big aha for me. And
wow.
So, it just put so many. I'd had a marvelous death experience, or not death experience, STE, which is spiritually transformative experience. And I had heard, like I'd been taught that oneness would, during that experience, but I hadn't understood it. It just didn't connect with me. And then when I read Goldsmith, it went click, and I understood. And that was the beginning of the big trip and then after that, I was on track for the most of the time. Sometimes I'd slept too.
I know that the reason why I was so excited to hear your stories that my mom was a nurse, and she would come back. She worked in several departments, and she would come back and talk to us about this beautiful experience that she had at the bedside of someone that was dying.
Oh,
And
yes.
she would, you would see this glow in her eyes as she began to talk. And we were, as kids, we would sit there in absolute amazement, just getting all the different stories and stuff. So that's why I was kind of excited about chatting with you to hear some of those stories. My sister was the same. I had good friends that worked in hospice that would tell these stories as well, because my background is healthcare. And I did some work in marketing for a skilled nursing facility. So I were privy to some of those times and how precious that that position is to be when people and their family can trust someone to guide and to be there. So as you started this and you started getting answers to of life's question, as they say, life and death questions, how did you then pivot and getting into being there after you study with other people and all the experience side of it? You had the lab by learning, the reading and studying. How did you get some of the experience through that?
Well, I was, when I retired, because I'm pretty old now, and so when I retired, I decided that I was going to write a book. And in my book, it was about a woman who astral projected or did OBEs. And but I had her doing some pretty crazy things, and I wasn't even sure if it was possible to do those things. And so I wanted to look up and see if it was possible. And I wound up on the near-death site because they had OBEs there, and it was called NDERF, which is Near-Death Experience Research Foundation. And Dr. Long, who owned the site, asked for somebody to do research, and I put my hand up because I had just retired and had lots of time. So that's how I got into the research. And the research was done mostly, although I did talk to quite a few people in person or, on the phone and so on. But the research was primarily people would send in their stories to NDERF, and then I would go through and I'd read the story. And then there was a huge questionnaire after that. And I would tear that questionnaire apart. And how many people had this happen? Or how many people had that happen? And that was my job. But I was so thrilled with what I was learning that after the research was finished, I just kept going because I didn't want to stop.
Wow.
I wanted to just keep, And so altogether, I did 2,500 near-death experiences.
That is absolutely impressive to have all of that data in your head, as to say, on this particular topic that not many people know much about or even venture out to study as much as you did collecting that data. Once you started collecting that data, how did you now begin to navigate? Did people call on you to talk about how did you begin to navigate from collecting all of this data now to bringing that information to people? How did you start that?
Right. Well, As I said, reading NDERFs and all the reports that were in there, I was just so enthralled with the knowledge that was coming back, and so that was what I just had to share it. And I had no intentions of writing that book when I did the research, but I was just thrilled, and so I had to share it with everybody. And so that was my first book, and that was The Wonder of You, What the Near-Death Experience Tells You About Yourself. And it described the death experience and step by step and then some of the deeper stuff. And then that book, sixth book, which is a subsidiary of John Hunt Publishing, got in touch with me and asked me if they could publish it. And so I decided to write more to it, add more. And so there, in that book, the second edition of The Wonder of You, I have quite a bit more information about the spiritual information, primarily, and I put a little bit of science in there, easy peasy science, and I talk about consciousness primarily as being the bottom line.
Yeah, that is awesome. I mean, wow, what a story to do all of this and then to be called upon to do that.
It's been a wonderful trip. I mean, right now, I had a rough life, but I'll tell you, I wouldn't give up a minute. It's been such a learning and growing and so many experiences and opening me up to just a wonderful world and people's reality. And I think my main message to everybody is how magnificent they really are. People don't realize that. There's so much guilt and we didn't do good enough stuff. And you can't not do good. You're just so magnificent.
Yeah, that's awesome. I know you had one of the things that you said in your book was that the near-death experience tells us about ourselves. And the insight, I wanted to know if you can go in and tell us a little more about that, because I'm sure people are going to be curious about that. How does a near-death experience teach me about myself? And if you can elaborate on that a little, that'd be awesome.
Yeah. Well, I think the bigger messages that some of the bigger messages, for one thing, was the oneness or the connectedness of everything, including inanimate, by the way. People repeatedly, over and over and over, would say that whether they were seeing the universe or whether they were seeing an object, repeatedly say they were one with it, or even a person. It just didn't matter. Everything was one together. There was no separation, and that tells me that that we have to start realizing that there's something way big behind that. The other thing that is that people actually entered into the light, that big white light that people talk about, and they actually entered into it. And those people, they saw how creation happened, and they saw that they were a part of the light, and so that was a beautiful experience for people to know that they are a part of that light. And it doesn't matter what religion you are. If you really stop and think that we are created by the Creator, whatever you call that Creator, how can you not be magnificent? How can you not be wonderful? The other thing I learned was that there is no animosity or no anger, any kind of issue that you would have with somebody at the point of death is gone. It's just instantly gone. It's just doesn't matter anymore to them, the ones that have passed on. We might be still holding some of that, but they're not holding any of it. It's gone.
Yeah. That's awesome. I know that I like the fact that you'd mentioned that they see that we're something bigger. And that's one of the insight, I think, if we can receive it here while we're alive, that we can look at each other and in such amazement with each other that we can walk and hold hands and understand that there's something bigger, and that there's no need for me or you to walk and look at each other in hatred, in anger, and all of these temporal things that we allow to our temporal moments of emotional outbursts to govern relationships, Lynn. I mean, they govern relationships for years. Families not forgiving each other, parents and children, and all of these things.
Yeah. In fact, that's taught all the way down. So for hundreds of years, like, for example, the Palestinians and the Jews, that's been passed on generation after generation for back to hundreds of years ago, which is really sad.
Yes, it is. And that's, if you go back, that's a family feud, basically, because they're related. We tend to, I try to tell people, don't hold on to those things, because I remember a story that the emotions of is very powerful. This woman had arthritis, and it was due to the fact that she hated her husband and refused to forgive him. And so if we don't learn how to control our emotions, and you're talking about people at a place where they're at and realize that those things that we place an importance on is not that important. And I hope the people that are listening to us would be able to get a chance of what you're talking about when you said the people didn't experience any of those hates and all those things. It didn't matter to them. So my hope is that someone listening would start releasing those things.
One that stuck with me. Well, there's several that have stuck with me, but this guy was named Mellon Thomas Benedict. And he hated people. And you were talking about, the animosity. He thought that people were cancer on the world. And by the way, he was dying of cancer. And so he died. And during his trip, and he's going wherever, and I can't remember whether he used a tunnel or what. But anyway, and he's going to wherever his place is going to be. And he said, stop it. No, just wait a minute here. And let's stop. I want to think about this. And everything stopped. And that was very, very important. And there's another woman called Nancy Dennison. And that Nancy Dennison also was going up in the tunnel. And she said to herself, I'm creating this, or I'm doing this, or something to that effect. And so then she started thinking about all kinds of places or that situation she could put herself in, and she would be there instantly. And it was just as real as this right here. And that's very important for people to understand, that not only do they create their death experience, but they also create their life experience. Anyway, Absolutely. Back to Mellon Thomas Benedict. He was told by his guides that there are no evil souls anywhere. And he came back absolutely loving mankind.
That's awesome that he could get that experience and outcome. Hopefully he can teach us how to love each other as he started loving.
I highly recommend people reading his experience. That one is on neardeathexperience.com. And you can also find it on his website if it's still up. He has since passed away, but I think his website's still there, and his experiences are there as well.
Okay.
And one other thing, just before I forget, because I do forget too much, is that people had all knowledge, and I mean everything. They knew every single thing, including quantum physics and how the universe began, and everything. There was no questions left. They forgot it when they came back. But while they were being told this answers and this knowledge, they would say, I knew that. How come I forgot it? And then they would forget it again when they came back.
I know that I love, you mentioned earlier that people have the power to create their life.
Yes, yes.
And their death. And here at Threads, I always tell people that we are creators. And one of the places that I tell them when they're in life and the dark periods of their life, to not look at it as total annihilation of themselves, but look at it as an opportunity to now create a new world. The first one was not working. So you look into this new world, you look into this darkness and say, okay, and get excited about, all right, let me create something different than what I had before. And we do that by starting announcing it, like you mentioned the gentleman yelled, stop, and all of these type stuff. And so as you begin to announce it, I believe that that force and that energy goes out and begins to bring the people in your path, bring all of the other things that you as a creator would need in order to create this new place and this new world.
Yes, very much so. Absolutely. Yeah. And we have so much more power than we give ourselves credit for having. You know, we can create miracles if we put our mind to it. And that's a long discussion, and I don't think that this is the right venue for it, but it's in my book if you want to get it.
Oh, I'll tell people get the book, because I'm sure with that many studies that you've done, there is a lot of information in that. I know I remember reading an old Chinese proverbs. They tell you to lay down and meditate and see yourself as if you've already passed. And once you have taken that into you and began to meditate on it and bring it and make it real, that now your time is to get up and live. Because
I just want to add to that what you're saying. When I was a little girl, I was about 7, I was assessed as being mentally slow and put in special classes for kids who couldn't learn. It was called the opportunity class. I'm not sure how much opportunity there was. Anyway, and I was there in grade 2 for 3 years. And so then when I was 31, well, actually a little before that, but anyway, when I was 31, I found out that I wasn't slow, that I was advanced, that I was actually above average in intelligence. And so that changed my life, that statement. I mean, like before, I was the victim. I always put myself down. Somebody else was better than me, that kind of thing. And now I could see myself. I could see a whole different way of seeing myself. So I made an image in my mind of the person I wanted to become, because I certainly didn't want to be who I was or what I was. And so I made a picture in my mind, and I lived to that. That was me. And it's become me.
Wow. So, congratulations.
Well, but I think that's a clue to everybody, because I think
everyone, yes. Yes. I knew in sales, I remember when they would tell us to put and again, it's visualization that they're trying to get you to achieve, and to see yourself doing this and see yourself doing that. And I try to tell people, Lynn, that the power that is within us to create is so incredibly strong that you have to come up with and death and all the other things to try and keep us down, because that thing is so strong. And even in death, you are explaining that some people are looking at it going, wow, I knew I had this knowledge, but I knew that. But as we're here, and science has proven we're only using a small percentage of our brain. And I believe that that is some of the issue with us, is that the fact that we haven't learned how to access that other percentage of our brain. Because imagine, Lynn, if we are able to access 50% of the human brain, what a place it would be, you know? But we're doing pretty good on the small percentage that we got so far. You look at the advances in science and all the different things. I think we're doing pretty good.
It's fun to learn, you know? It's fun to play around and discover these things and go, oh, wow. You know, I think it's fun.
But I think that's how we are set up and how we're wired. I think I was talking to someone a few days ago that 90% of the people are in a job that they don't like, and they work for those days that they're at work, and then they hurry up to get to the weekend to numb their senses with drinking and partying, and then lock themselves back into this for Monday. Sunday they're totally out. The body needs that to even make sense of what just took place. And then we start it all over again. And we're like that for 50 years, 40 years. And we look at our lives and go, what have we done? And so I'm hoping as people listen to us, Lynn, listen to us talk, younger people would begin to become aware and start their self-journey. And the self-journey that I keep telling people is that day that you look at yourself and life and say, there must be something else. And that's when you begin to ask your questions of yourself. And as you begin to ask those questions and be honest with you, because you can't lie to yourself, you may lie to me, but once you become honest, you have just begun your journey of self-improvement, enlightenment, however we term it. But it is important that you begin to ask those questions. And the insight that you've gained from all of the 2,500 studies that you have done with the near-death experience is you're getting testimonies of people that have looking at us going, wow, we need to make some adjustments. We need to make some adjustments, you know, loving people, using different aspects of our brain, studying more, becoming more open, as you say.
Anita Moorjani, in her book, I think it's Dying to Be Me, or something like that. Anyway, sorry, I can't think of what it is.
That's okay.
She talks about a warehouse, and she says that we go into this warehouse, and it's enormous, it's eternal, it goes on forever, this direction, that direction, that direction, and we're looking at this place, one shelf, or one area of a shelf. And so that's where we're looking. But we have all these other choices that we don't even see.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah.
I absolutely agree to that, you know, and we talk about some of those things in quantum physics and, you know, to all the different aspects in that. And I so enjoy you coming and talking to us, because this is one topic, like I said, as a young man, I heard a lot from my mom. And as I got older, I remember my mom used to work in a nursing home, and I would come to get her when my dad would pick her up from work. And I remember when in New York, I'd walk into the nursing home and had all the elderly people would be pulling on my cheeks. And I said to her, I'm never going to work in one of these places. and then I ended up working as one of the managers in the building. And I remember when my very first week in that industry, my sister had told me, first I was working in managed healthcare HMOs, and my sister kept telling me, don't come into the skilled nursing facility part. It's going to break your heart. And, she said, you have to have a tough stomach for this. And my very first week in the skilled nursing facility, there was this lady, a resident, that she would call me in the morning and pull my cheek, and she said if I was just a few years younger. And one morning, Lynn, I came in and I went to, as it was my custom, every morning I would come into work, I'd go to her and we sit down and we'd talk. And one morning I came in and we went to talk, and I saw her, and she was not herself. And I said to her, I said, are you okay? You need me to get some help? She said, no, I'm okay. And I left and I went to my office. I sat down, and about 10 minutes later, someone came into my office and told me that she had passed. And I remember here I was, this man in my suit, and broke down crying in the middle of my office. Because at that moment, I realized what a honor and a pleasure that it was for me and everyone that is ever working in a skilled nursing facility to be there, because we have the preciousness of years of love and stories. And so I got a chance, Lynn, to be in some of those passings where you were there and experience some of the joy that you would see on the people's face. And some people, ecstasy that is there. It's hard to explain unless you're familiar, you've been there, because there's this grin that is absolutely wild and beautiful at the same time.
Yeah, that's a beautiful story, Ken. Yeah, and great understanding and knowledge, like you gained a lot during that experience.
Yeah. I became, working there, I became a better human spirit. I became a better man. I became softer in my approach to life, more appreciative, more thankful of everything. And people need to study your book and read your book, because those experiences are priceless. I know that from listening to my sister and my friends that are in the business and had my time there as well. I know how that is,
Yeah. And can I tell people about my last book?
Oh, please, about the book for the children?
Yeah. It's a quick little thing.
Yes.
I love this book. It's one of my favorites. Of all the books I've written, this is my favorite. I have another book that's coming out later. But right now, the children's book I carried around with me for years, actually. It was one of those ones that were on my computer, and yes, I'll get to it. But I loved it. I mean, I don't know why I didn't get to it. But anyway, it's a story of a boy who lives in the projects and is not very happy with life. And he's being bullied by the other kids at school. And so then he winds up in this other dimension with warm, fuzzy creatures that are a little bit strange, but they're fun. And he goes on a great adventure with them to save their world. And these creatures teach him that all connected, that love is the greatest power in the universe, that anger and resentment come back at you. You're the one who suffers. And that, what was the other one? Oh, kindness and caring are contagious.
Nice. I know you have, go ahead.
I was just going to say the book is called Warple. It's WORPPLE.
Yeah, I was about to quote one of your have inside that I thought was excellent. You know, if
Okay.
we believe in ourselves and keep love at our side, we can accomplish miracles. And I think that
Yes.
is absolutely that whole process, that the whole sentence encapsulate love and life and the power of it all. And I think that is actually so great that the
Exactly.
journey that you mentioned is just in that beautiful phrase, because there's a scripture in the Bible that when I read it, the disciples came to Jesus and said, "What's the greatest commandment?" And he says, "To love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, and with all thy mind, and with all thy strength, and to love thy neighbor as you love yourself."
Yeah,
And so I think
exactly.
that when you take that scripture and you line it up with all of our crazy behaviors, then
Yeah.
you can see why where we're missing it.
Yeah. Yeah.
We're
Yeah.
missing it because
Ego takes over. Yeah. Ego is pretty strong.
yeah, they are not having that relationship, number one, with their God. They are not having that relationship, number two, with themselves.
Yeah.
And number three, the third relationship that is mentioned in that scripture is with
Yeah.
their neighbors. And so
Yeah.
they're failing, and we're failing in all three. And
Right.
so
Right. Yeah.
we are looking at a world that's failing because we are not in love with our God, ourselves, and our neighbors.
I think I know that there's bigotry and prejudice everywhere in the whole
Oh,
world,
yeah.
but I think that parts of the world aren't quite as difficult as what's happening in the United States. And so your lens that you're looking at the world through is from a difficult position.
Yeah. Yeah. I believe so. The lens that you do look into your situation governs your life. And that's when I think that lens is your perspective and how you look
Mm-hmm.
at things.
Mm-hmm.
And when you adjust your perspective slightly, it doesn't take much. When it's through a conversation, it's through reading a book,
Right.
it's through listening to a song,
Right.
it's through many different avenues, but when it is used, it will shift your perspective and cause you to
That's
change
true.
your life and become a creator.
Yeah,
You know?
yeah, that's very true. I love that. That's very nice. Thank you.
uh, Lynn, I wanted to thank you for coming by to us here at Threads of Enlightenment. It was for me, it was an honor to have someone that has that type of data within themselves that is offering to share it. Anyone that is listening to us, get Lynn's book, both of them. Get it for the children, get it for yourself, buy extra copies and give it to friends and families, because this particular topic needs to be understood. And once we begin to understand from those knowledge and those experience that people offer us through reading of Lynn's book and the data that she collected, that we can then turn to each other, love each other better. We can express ourselves differently through love than anger and hatred and all of these things. And so, Lynn, I personally want to say thank you for coming to Threads
Oh,
of
it was my
Enlightenment.
honor.
I
Thank
do
you so
appreciate it.
much. I just want to say that people can contact me through my website, which is lynnk.com. lynnk.com. I said it right
Excellent.
that time.
Before I send it out anyway to all the people, Lynn, I'm going to put all of that in there for them so
Okay.
that they can reach you. I'm going to even write them and tell them to we put you on all the different all those things like Instagram and social media stuff. We put you on there, and I will put all your information all over.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. I love it.
You're welcome, and you have a good day. And thank you for coming again at Threads of Enlightenment.
Oh, it was my pleasure. I really enjoyed our chat very much.
Thank you. Good night. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Everyone who's listening to this podcast, We hope to continually help you to learn how to embrace moments of darkness, because it is in the darkness that we learn how to develop and use our abilities to truly see those parts of ourselves, often invisible to us, in the light. It becomes your responsibility to navigate through all of your trials, to find out who you truly are and begin your journey to loving yourself, which is possibly one of the most difficult things you will ever do in your life. To love yourself and to find the real you, but always remember to enjoy the journey. Thank you for coming by. Please subscribe, and if you can support us financially, we deeply appreciate it.